How do you do? Just a word of friendly warning. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now is your chance to, well, we've warned you.
Hey everybody, this is Freddy and our old friend Tony Wash. If you remember from the early days of the podcast, It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want To, one of our favorite indie films from the early years. I have him on the phone or Skype. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing great, man. It's good to talk to you. It's been a long-ass time since I've been on the show, and I'm looking forward to having a good bullshit session tonight.
That sounds good. And also joining us, Ben Lewandowski, who is one of Tony's cohorts. Hey there, Ben.
Hi there. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. This is fun. I had the pleasure of watching Tony's new movie. This is why Tony disappeared for a while, because you were working so much, right?
Oh, yeah. 3 features coming out this year.
That is great. The first one that we want to talk about is The Rake.
Does this look familiar? Mom and Dad, Jacob Murphy.
Jacob Murphy has been dead for 20 years.
It didn't end with Murphy. He was just a body, a vessel. One of many.
They should have never released her from the hospital. She obviously needs a lot of supervision and help.
She's my sister. There was something else in the house. You know what this is. You saw it that night.
She believes she's becoming its conduit.
To do what?
To infect us all.
And this one was a really nice atmospheric horror film. I enjoyed it a lot. Kind of a creature feature in a lot of ways, but also family melodrama. So what went into this? Like how I'm kind of curious. I know Jeremy Silva helped write it, correct?
Yeah. Jeremy and I wrote together.
Yeah, it's pretty spooky, man, and it's good house porn too.
Yeah, we the goal was, the inception of the project was kind of like, we need to make something that we can do for little to no money, and the way we're going to save on our budget is by keeping a minimal cast and minimal locations. So, that kind of relegates you to either a group of people in the woods or a spooky old house with something happening to a group of innocent people in said spooky old house. So that's kind of where that concept originated from, and I'm obviously a really big fan of 70s and 80s horror, so The Shining and Alien were 2 films that I really wanted to try and build off of the atmosphere that they had created so well, and that's pretty much what set the foundation for the overall feel of what The Rake was supposed to be.
Yeah, and you have a great foundation with the relationship between this brother and sister who end up in foster care after the events of the opening scenes of the movie. And I just love the relationship they have with their adopted sister and all that groundwork, that drama. That's what we always say, you're going to care more when these people are in peril if you make them as real as possible and as sympathetic as possible. And you really nailed that with this, and I really enjoyed it a lot. So thanks for sharing your film with me. And I also loved your practical effects that you had in there. It was really good, solid film.
Thank you. Yeah, I really wanted it to be a monster movie sandwiched within a psychological thriller, and so that's why we really worked at establishing a handful of red herrings. In the movie, I feel like throughout majority of the film, the audience doesn't know whether or not it's just crazy people being crazy, or if it's actually a monster until the end of the movie. And so I think that worked out fairly well with how it all ended up playing out on camera. But I appreciate the fact that you point out the performances of not only the actors but of the characters themselves, because I've had a handful of reviewers where they're like, oh, well, you don't really care about any of the characters, and yada yada yada, about the fact that there's just no care for any of the characters in it, and so you don't care when they die. And I feel like that's because a lot of people don't really pay attention to movies anymore. And so if you actually are paying attention, like you picked up the fact that even though it's never specifically stated that Nicole, played by Rachel Melvin, is their foster sister, you picked up that she's their adoptive sister. Some people are like, oh, she's like the third sibling and or whatever. And I'm like, well, where the hell was she at in the beginning of the movie if she's the third sibling? You know, like
that. Yeah, fell victim to the short attention span. I can't imagine a legitimate film critic not picking up on that relationship, like unless they were playing like Candy Crush on their phone and not really.
and I mean, like, there is, to be fair, there is to Jeremy in particular, since he wrote majority of the character stuff in the movie, there is about 15 minutes of the film that's left on the cutting room floor that was mostly involving further character development sequences that are not in the film, partially because the editing team wanted to leave the fact that the main character is pregnant to be a surprise. Halfway through the movie, you discover that she's with child, whereas originally you know that she's pregnant the entire movie. And that's kind of why she's coming home, why she wants to be close to her family again, why her and her husband are starting fresh, so to speak. And so by removing all of the instances where they discuss the pregnancy prior to the dinner sequence, which now in the movie comes 30 minutes in, you not only keep that a secret, which is kind of interesting and a cool play, but it also, in an unfortunate manner, removes a lot of the character development and a lot of the establishment of the relationships with some of the characters, particularly the husband and wife who are moving into the new house. You lose a lot of the tender moments between them, and in a lot of ways you don't learn as much about the character of her husband, Andrew, played by Joey Bachicki, which is unfortunate because he was my major red herring in the film. He was the one that I wanted everybody to look at and say, this guy reminds me of Jack Torrance. He's Jack Nicholson from The Shining. And you see him start out as this loving husband who's very excited about his newborn baby on the way and his loving wife. And as the movie progresses, the influence of the rake, which is essentially a supernatural pestilence, if you want to look at it as something, it just continues to eat away at his sanity and his positivity and his enthusiasm, and it turns him into what Jack Torrance becomes at the end of The Shining.
Yeah, and I feel, the way that you did ultimately edit it together, I did get a lot of sympathy, even though he isn't necessarily portrayed as a nice person, you know what I mean, with what's left in the film. You do still kind of sympathize with him because he's in this very awkward position to have his newly pregnant wife. He's starting their family's just getting off the ground and they're in their new house, and then trouble comes in with this sister who has all these issues that he maybe he didn't bargain for. So you do kind of sympathize with him even when he's being less than kind to our troubled sister character. I really like the performances of the brother. That Stephen Brody, is that right?
Yeah, that was Stephen Brody.
He did a great job, and I really bought them as brother and sister, and the way they played off of each other was great. Just a really solid movie. Also, I love the setting, the house that you filmed in. It's such a great atmosphere. It's got a real spooky vibe to it. How did you guys nail that location down?
I'll tell you, I got damn lucky. My good friend Nicole DeFilippis, she is a wedding photographer, and she does all the BTS photography from our movies.
Hi, Nikki, if you're listening.
Yeah, hey, Nikki, we love you. And so Nikki, she used to work overnights for a stock exchange company. I don't know, a brokerage company or something. And so her and I used to be a night owl. Like, I'm always been a night owl. So her and I used to, like, text message back and forth while we would be working late at night. I'd be at home and she'd be at her office downtown. And we would put on a shitty horror movie on YouTube. YouTube, you can find like 150 shitty horror movies on there. And like Rocktober Blood. And
is it Nikki that found Rocktober Blood?
Yeah, we found that on there. That's become kind of an inner circle movie for us. If you haven't seen Rocktober Blood, you should definitely give that a whirl. But we would basically put on a shitty horror movie, and then we would text back and forth about the shitty movie while we were both working in our respective locations. And one night we were sitting doing that, and she's like, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm on Zeusk, and all these other, not Zeusk. Zeusk is that's the fucking romance one. Zillow.
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
They both start with Z's. So I was on Zillow looking for a house to shoot this movie in. And she's like, oh, well, okay, I'll help you out. Because she was bored and tired of culling photos from, the weddings she was working on. So she jumped on some real estate website. And a couple minutes into it was like, here, take a look at this one. And we were looking I wanted a large house, preferably a ranch, so that it could be more sprawling than on top of itself. I wanted a big basement, preferably unfinished, and I wanted a wooded yard. And she found the ideal location. It's in Volo, Illinois. And we just went and checked it out. The owner of it was really cool about it was his mother's or his parents' house. And they had passed away, and it was just kind of sitting, available for rent or sale. And so we rented it for 2 months and shot the movie there over the span of 19 days in March and April of 2015. And it just worked out perfectly.
Yeah, and is it as spooky? Was it as spooky working there as it is in the film, or is that something that you really played up?
I was there a couple of times by myself. And there, I could see why it would be creepy. To me, it wasn't a very creepy house because I didn't feel like there was any areas of the house after having shot in it and had it covered in fucking tons of movie lights and being in there with 50 other people at sometimes. I never really was creeped out, but I had like the art department. Some of the girls spent the night in the house, like they actually stayed there while we were shooting, and I know they had moments where they thought it was very creepy. So the location in and of itself overall was pretty creepy. There was in the woods behind the house, there was an old 1960s camper, like an old Winnebago or something, and it was just totally fucking rotted and disgusting, and that's why we didn't shoot in it. Otherwise, we were going to try and write into a scene to incorporate it somehow because it was so cool looking and creepy. But legitimately, if you stepped foot in this thing, which we of course did, there was so much mold in there that you could probably get some sort of sickness from it. But other than that, I don't think it was really creepy at all. But maybe that's just me.
I mean, I'd buy the place. I love the look of it. I would just kill to have a place with windows like that, looking out on the woods and everything. It was so cool, and the wine cellar and all that was nice too.
Well, the wine cellar was built. The art department added that. But yeah, it was a cool house. I mean, it was big. It was 4 bedrooms, 4 full bathrooms. Was it? Yeah, 4 full baths. And it was very open. And which I really like. I'm a big fan of open floor plans. It had a huge back porch, and it was a secluded lot. It was off of a major highway, but the woods around the house made it feel so secluded that it was just the optimal location for shooting a movie. Plus, the woods were nice and big, so we didn't have to find a secondary location to shoot all the exterior stuff because we could do it all there.
Yeah. So I recommend to our listeners to what's the best place for them to find The Rake, by the way?
So it's available on DVD at Walmart. That's obviously the most accessible. And it's across the country. I've had people show me they've bought it in Florida, Georgia, New York, Pittsburgh, California. So it's everywhere. Oklahoma. You can rent it on cable, pretty much, I think, any cable outlet. You can go to the on-demand section of your cable network and find it. You can get it from BestBuy.com, iTunes, Amazon, Vudu. So it's pretty much anywhere. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. And if for nothing else, watch it for the monster. The monster, in my opinion, and I'm not just saying it because I made the fucking movie, but Jason Kane, who's my effects supervisor, did such a phenomenal job of working with the design that he and I had come up with and creating just what I think is a legitimately memorable horror creature. You know, it's better than half the stuff I've seen coming out from Hollywood these days.
Hi, Jason. If you're listening.
Ben's just calling out to the group.
Beefcake!
Ben's like a hype man.
Yeah.
You guys are like hip hop artists now.
Right?
So my suggestion is get The Rake, turn the lights down, turn your phone off, and really watch the movie on the biggest screen you have in your house. I think you'll enjoy it. Just pay attention. Because you don't want to be that film critic that thought that there was no foster kid relationship here, because that's kind of dumb. That rings dumb to me.
And that's how it is. I think a lot of people, because they're not paying attention, they blame the movie for having a poorly written script or you know, it's not a good movie. They automatically say, well, it wasn't a good movie. And it's like, well, first of all, it has nothing to do with the script. Everybody should, you know, people don't realize that, you know, the editing of a movie is the final thing that kind of tweaks it. And I'm not criticizing the edit. I'm not complimenting the edit. I'm just saying that is the final creative, roadblock, I guess, for a film. And that's where a lot of the make or breaks on a project are made. And so, you know, I only hope that people are willing to give the movie. It's only an 80-minute movie. It's very fast. So I just hope that people are willing to sit through it, because I think it's got great atmosphere. And like I said, I think that the monster is incredible. And I think the performances are great. The actors all did a hell of a job creating memorable and realistic characters. And when they die, you're either cheering or you're upset. And I think that's, you know, what you want to get out of it. So
yeah, it's a good movie. I settled into this movie. It caught me in the right mood, and I think that it's one of those ones you have to give yourself over to the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to cooperate with the movie and get into the mode and set the mood the way we used to watch movies, because there's atmosphere building in the beginning of this movie, and you're not going to get the build of the atmosphere if you're not devoting some resources to watching it and creating an environment worth watching it in. Which, if you're a fan of film, that's how you should be watching every movie anyway.
And a lot of people don't anymore. They just don't.
Yeah, so true.
Now here's a question for you.
Yeah.
So, do you feel like, and I don't know how long it's been since you've seen It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want To, but you guys gave me the best quote for that movie, and it was, you said, "This is by far the best independent movie we've seen on our show since day one." And the fact that you guys quoted that was such a phenomenal compliment to us, you know, on that movie. So comparatively, this being 10 years after the release of It's My Party, how do you compare the two films in my catalog?
That's a really interesting question. I would say this movie is a much more polished movie. There was a spirit that It's My Party had that was so hard to match, because it was so fun and felt it was like kind of recklessly put together in a way that made it more fun than
Sure.
something. So they're so different. And I would say when we talk about Skeletons in the Closet later, that movie is also very different from this movie. So I do like that every time you were releasing a film, it seems like you're pivoting and trying new things. Because, you couldn't really, I don't think you could, if you set out to recreate It's My Party, I don't know if all of those elements would have come together the same way now. So I like that now you've done something that's a little more of an earnest character piece.
Well, and my goal, first of all, I really appreciate you saying all that. It's the nice thing to know is that you actually paid attention to both movies, so you could properly analyze them in a intelligent manner. So I appreciate that breakdown. But it's cool because what I love about my catalog is that as a filmmaker, I feel like a lot of filmmakers get stuck. They paint themselves into a corner and get typecast. And I unintentionally have had such a broad catalog. High on the Hog, for example, my second feature, which is actually the fourth feature to get released by me, because that's coming out in a few months, that's a Grindhouse movie. And I was hired to direct that, so I didn't have any involvement in the creation of that film, from its inception until I got onto actually directing it.
Yeah.
Then I became more involved creatively, but it's just cool how it's all worked out that these films that we've produced over the last 10 years have been so drastically different, because it showcases my ability, I think, to really do anything. I mean, shit, I'll direct a Hallmark movie. I'll make my mother proud.
Now, family is whatever and whoever you want it to be. They are your home. Home is where your heart lives. Home is where your stash is. Whether it be blood, weed, or sex that ties you together, love hard, baby.
I don't want no mistakes, Lola. I couldn't bear to see something bad happen to my girls. My family's owned this farm for 5 generations.
That's wheat, corn, and cannabis.
You do realize that that's the best weed in the United States of America. Can you pack me a fresh one, darling? And remember, pack it tight.
Welcome to hell, asshole!
Well, you got 5 dead kids on the street and the new drug, so...
This has got to be the same stuff.
You got any suggestion?
I want to go deep cover.
Well, you need a bust.
I got this shit from this guy named Breezy. Check it out.
And you need it soon.
Yo, man, these girls, they just roll up into town.
Something dirty's going on here.
I want this case. I can infiltrate the family and help take them all down.
What the fuck you doing?
I'm making this case for us. Hey, get the fuck off her!
We want to help you, okay? We want to make sure the man that hurt you won't find you.
Rise and shine, girlie.
We're not drug dealers. We're farmers. Hell, we're family.
You can be a part of that family if you like.
You hear that? You're one of his girls. The people really love you. They don't want to hurt you.
Doesn't make sense. This family isn't who we thought they were. Don't come yet.
Come on, AJ, you're a federal agent, for Christ's sakes.
She fooled us all.
Grass is grass now.
I don't know about my fellow peace pipers, but I'm starting to sweat.
This is our home! Somebody wants to take it from me, you're gonna have a fight on the hands. Take your federal ass and get the fuck off my property.
You going down, Daddy-o.
Semper Fi, motherfucker! If I have to choose between the farm and my family, it's my family.
This whole fucking town is gonna burn!
I thought I was gonna get a heart attack.
Get back in the house now! No!
Let's make this bitch squeal.
Take this, dick!
What's the story of you getting hired on to direct that?
So initially, one of the producers on that film had seen my Nazi zombie short film, A Chance in Hell, in 2010. And so in 2012, when they were working on the pre-production for High on the Hog, they reached out to me to do the special effects on the movie. There's, some gunshots and somebody gets their head chopped off, and so there's some violence in it. It's a grindhouse movie, as I said, exploitation. So there's some blood and guts in it. And so we were brought on to do the special effects, and at this point, Jason Kane, my effects supervisor, and I were working on effects stuff a lot, and I was trying to produce some different projects. And so we started developing the effects for the movie, and I started getting phone calls from the producer, and she started asking me all these questions about producing and directing, and do you think this, and would you do this, and what's your opinion on this? And after like 3 phone calls, I want to say over that summer of 2012, the first part of that summer, I finally just kind of got the balls to say, I hope you're either planning on giving me an associate producer credit, or are you legitimately looking to hire me as the director to your movie? Because at this point, I've either given you enough advice to where you need to give me an associate producer credit, because at this point they had been talking seriously to Sid Haig about bringing him on the project, and Robert Zadar and Joe Estevez were already attached. And so to me it was like, if I can get an associate producer credit on this movie instead of just special effects coordinator and artist, then that's really going to help my career, because at that point I'd only had 1 feature with It's My Party. And she just flat out said, she's like, I'm thinking about, talking to the executive producer, Kevin Lockhart, about hiring you as the director. And at the time they had another director on board, and I guess things just weren't working out, and didn't have the time to focus on the movie. And so, which is understandable. Everybody's got shit going on. Everybody's got day jobs and families.
So you didn't meet Kevin until summer 2012?
Yeah. So I basically, what happened was, I want to say, if I remember correctly, she went and talked to Kevin, who's the executive producer and who wrote the movie, and he said, yeah, let's do it. If you want to do that, then let's do it. And so she called me back, and they hired me to be the director. And the first time I met Kevin, then, who's the executive producer again, was when I went to meet up with him for that and talk about that. So that was just one of those really awesome opportunities. It was serendipitous, where I was excited to be brought on to do the special effects, and we were working on those and looking forward to being on the movie for a week or whatever to work on them. But then to be brought on in the capacity of, the Helmer was it was a terrific compliment to my confidence. Because as an independent filmmaker, you have so many ups and downs and so many hurdles that, at the time I was trying to get The Storm produced, which is a alien roller derby horror film. I know that sounds absolutely batshit crazy, but it's basically a team of roller derby girls who are the main characters, and there's an alien invasion. And so it's like if you crossed Night of the Creeps with Whip It, and made a horror movie. And so it would be a hell of a lot of fun to do, but it would cost a shit ton of money. And so I was going through a lot of hard times trying to get that movie off the ground and find investors and stuff. And so to all of a sudden wake up one day and be the director of a Sid Haig vehicle, it was tremendously complimentary and boosted the shit out of my confidence and my positivity.
Yes, Sid Haig has become like a grindhouse icon ever since he worked with Rob Zombie, and I'm wondering, with his backlog of work and everything you can imagine leading up to that, this third act in his career as this icon of kind of a sleazy type of cinema. It's really interesting to see, and I love that he's kind of run with it, and this character is. It's not Captain Spaulding, but it's in the vein of this wisecracking southern farmer, right? And he's got weed growing on his farm, and he's got all the farmer's daughters type characters around him.
Yeah, and there is a definite distinctive difference between Captain Spaulding and Big Daddy, which is what Sid's character's name is in Eye on the Hog. He's actually the good guy in the movie, and that's part of what Sid loves so much about the script and what he loves so much about being a part of the movie is it's him stepping away from the character that people are used to him playing. but he obviously still has a majority of the personality traits because that's just Sid Haig. That's not Captain Spaulding. It's just Sid being Sid.
And that's what's fun to watch, too.
Yes, yeah, and that was fun to work with. I mean, Sid is a hell of a guy, and he, it was just really cool because he brought that Sid Haig personality to the character, but because it was a good guy character, he wanted to make sure that people saw that he had heart and that he had integrity. And so those are really cool character traits that you're not accustomed to seeing Sid Haig play. And I know he really got more enthusiastic about having as character traits. And it's cool because it does play into still what Sid Haig is best known for. And it's like until his third act in his career, his swan song, so to speak, people may have known him from House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects, but until they really started realizing how big of an icon he is for not just Grindhouse but also horror because of all the conventions and stuff that he does, I don't think people really realized all the older Grindhouse movies he did. I mean, he was in all the Roger Corman stuff that was shot in the Philippines, like what was it, The Big Bird Cage?
Oh, all the Jack Hill films.
The Doll, like Big Doll House or whatever it was called. All the Jack Hill movies.
And the funny thing is when we go to these conventions and we're with Haig and people are looking at all his photos to buy so they can get an autograph, they don't even know what these movies are. And most of his library, I would say 98% of his library was available long before he put on the clown makeup. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like people really take the time to know those movies, but then again, that could be a generational thing.
Well, and you do have the diehard fans who come up to him and are like, I remember that episode of Batman the TV show you were in, or I remember when you were on Star Trek.
Yeah,
or,
you do get that once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was on an episode of MacGyver, for Christ's sake. I mean, the guy's been in everything.
He's done everything. I think he was I want to say he was on Amazing Stories, too, and I know he, I love Spider Baby. That's such a great movie.
Yeah, he was great in Spider Baby.
Yeah, he's done so many great like sci-fi and horror stuff, and westerns, you name it. Like he's been all over the map, which is a similar thing to say for his co-star in your movie. Joe Estevez has also got quite the filmography under his belt.
Oh, geez, him and Bobby. Did they ever?
Yeah, Joe Estevez was also a force to direct and work with. He carries himself. He has a very commanding presence, and I really like that about him. I appreciate the fact that he was as excited about the movie as he was, because to me, he is the fact that he's been in over 200 movies, I want to say, is what his number's at now. Like, to me, it's a compliment to High on the Hog that he was as excited about it as he was,
Yeah, check this out. He did season 1, episode 10 of Amazing Stories, 1986. He did an episode called Remote Control Man, directed by Bob Clark.
That's cool.
Yeah, Sid Haig, not Joe Estevez, right?
Yeah, not Joe Estevez.
Yeah, that was a really fun episode too. I think he was like one of the gangsters that shows up in that episode.
Yeah.
Which I'm still a huge Amazing Stories fan, but yeah, and Sid Haig is one of those actors again, like that I think he's been rediscovered by like 4 generations now, where people have come to him, like you were saying, through Rob Zombie's films, but the people who go back and dig into his catalog, you realize that this guy, one, is a very talented actor, and 2, he has disappeared and reappeared in a really interesting way over the years through TV and film, and just turns up in the most unexpected places. So as does Joe Estevez. Any big Mystery Science Theater 3000 fan will remember him from a number of movies that they've covered.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's got some classics in there.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think Werewolf or what was.
What's fucking nuts? Yeah.
Yeah. So great. Did you guys ever? Did he say anything about any of that while you were working with him? Did you guys have any of those conversations?
No, I mean, I didn't have a lot of time talking to Joe. Like, I didn't bullshit with Joe a whole ton. I had a lot of time talking to him, and he was a lot of fun to work with, but I didn't, like, have the the sessions of sitting and just relaxing and talking to him as much. I had some nice conversations with Robert Zadar, which was really great, that I got to work with him before he passed away. And Sid in particular was just a lot of fun. I've told this story a number of times because it's just such a special moment in my life. We had been shooting one of our scenes, and the sun was setting, and so we had to set up lights to kind of mimic the sun, and we just weren't really happy with how it was looking. And the scene itself, the blocking of it was just kind of stale, and I just wasn't really feeling it. And you could tell everybody on set was a little tired and stuff. And we finished shooting, and I walked up to Sid as he was getting out of his wardrobe and getting ready to head back to the motel, and I was just like, hey. He's like, what's up? And I'm like, you want to go get a beer? And he's like, fuck yeah. And so Sid Haig and I went, and his handler, Mike, who's a friend of the producer Kevin's, who was on set just kind of helping Sid with whatever he needed help with. The three of us went from the motel to this little seedy bar in Elizabeth, Illinois, and we drank Busch Light cans at this little bar and just fucking bullshitted about everything, about filmmaking and about life. And that to me is one of the most memorable experiences of my career.
That's great that you could take that away from this, because he's got a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience, but he's also a little crazy with the especially with that Busch Light stuff that you guys I can't believe at his age he would still drink Busch Light.
Well, you have to think about it. First of all, this was 6 years ago at this point. We were shooting 6 years ago today.
Yeah.
But it was 6 years ago, so he was in his early 70s. He was still on the high from, I think at that point, Devil's Rejects was maybe, 6 years old, 7 years old probably. So he was still on the high from all the success off of that movie. And then, I just think that, first of all, when you're in Elizabeth, Illinois, you can only get Busch Light. You're not going to, they don't know what craft beer is out there, which I don't think is a bad thing necessarily. The hipsters can swear at me all they want, but...
no IPAs out there.
Yeah, no craft beers out there.
You can at least get him a High Life, though,
Yeah, but he wanted the Busch Light, Sid wanted to get... Again, that's the thing you have to understand is I will give that man credit till the day I die for being a team player. I've worked with my fair share of actors over my 13 years of being a filmmaker and professionally, and for Sid Haig to be I would say he's the biggest name I've worked with, despite the names in the rake and having worked with Savini on It's My Party. I think Sid is still the biggest name I've worked with that I've directed, and he was probably the most humble of the lot. In the respect of one of my other fun stories is we were shooting a sequence that we found the day of. We were driving to the location that is the sheriff's station in High on the Hog, as well as where there's a scene where the girls from the movie are doing target practice on the farm. And so we're driving to this set, and as we're driving, I see this beautiful cornfield that with these rolling hills of green corn, and I'm like, that's where we're going to shoot these couple of scenes that we needed a location for. So we're like, all right, cool, we'll come back and shoot those. And then across from it was a old cemetery, real old, middle of nowhere cornfield cemetery, okay? And the headstones are toppled over on their sides, and there's people born in 1850, shit like that. And I'm like, that's where we're going to shoot. There's a scene where he's in a cemetery talking to his father's grave, having this very pensive and kind of reflective moment that's really nice. Again, something that you do not see from Sid Haig traditionally. And so while we're shooting these, he's obviously in two different outfits from one scene in the cornfield to the scene at the cemetery. So he's got to change. But we're on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. We don't have a honey wagon or anything. We don't even have a fucking conversion van. So Sid just drops trow on the side of this road and starts changing into his other outfit. So Sid Haig is in his whitey tighties on the side of this road fucking getting ready for his next scene. And it's just like, this is the guy who's willing to do anything. And he translated that into actually becoming a producer on the movie. And so, you know, it's pretty awesome. Like, he was only set to shoot for 11 days. We shot for the 11 days with him, and then he actually stayed on set for an extra week. He like called his wife and said, "Honey, I'm not coming home. I'm going to be here for another week." And he basically was my unit production manager for a week on set because he wanted to show the cast and crew his dedication to the project and kind of help run things to make sure that everything was running smoothly, because we had some issues with like the production department in terms of organization and stuff initially.
Just putting it mildly.
Yeah, so you know,
this is the first movie where he has his name over the title. First and only, right?
Yeah, this is the first and only movie that Sid Haig puts his name over the title. So it's Sid Haig starring in High on the Hog, which is a pretty awesome compliment to us. So yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I love those stories about him because, you know, it's one of those things as a fan, you always kind of suspect that he's the kind of guy who would strip down to his underwear on the side of the road and drink Busch Light. You know what I mean?
Drinking Busch Light at the same time in his underwear.
Yeah, which speaks to, you know, it's like, that's an everyman right there, man. That's somebody who is about making a movie and not about being a movie star, which is really cool.
It's cool. And that movie's just going to be fun. Like, so Ben's involvement with High on the Hog is Ben was brought on to edit the movie. You know, and so we had an edit of the film that our on-set editor, Michael Heffler, who's working, you know, with Netflix shit now, he had done, and it was great. It was a good edit, but it made the movie very dramatic. It was his and my first edit of the film, and the movie was a lot more drama based and not as action packed. And so, you know, we just ultimately felt like it would serve the movie better to give it more of a grindhouse style edit. And so Ben was brought on to re-edit the film, and you saw it in the trailer. And anybody out there, just search on Google High on the Hog movie trailer, and you'll see the X-rated movie trailer. Do not watch it at work. It is definitely NSFL. But you'll see kind of Ben's editing style. It's very crazy and in your face. And if people have short attention spans and they don't pay attention to High on the Hog, they should probably end their miserable existence, because yes, I'm promoting suicide. Jesus, what a terrible human being.
You know what, the trailer gave me a vibe of you remember Laugh-In when they would sock it to me?
Yeah.
It kind of had that, like, you know, Goldie Hawn dancing in a bikini vibe to it.
There's a scene in the movie, I was very, very conscious of that, when Joe and Jesse are having their scene. The pow,
yeah, and that's how it is. You know, there's a drug trip sequence in the movie that has got one of our fellow World of Death filmmakers. World of Death is the web series.
Hi, Chris.
Ben, you're fucking hysterical. Shouting out to everybody. But we curate this web series called World of Death through BloodydIsgusting.com. And the great thing about it is it's introduced us to all these different filmmakers around the world. And so we brought Chris Younce, who's a claymation animator from the United Kingdom, on board. And he directed this batshit claymation sequence that basically we incorporated into this drug tripping sequence where this girl freaks out after smoking some drugs. And, the movie's just all over the place.
He actually recreated a scene from the movie with claymation, and then we built it into the movie.
That's fun.
And it's in the trailer. There's a piece of it from the trailer. When the skull pops up, that's Chris's work. Yeah, it's nuts. Nice way to put it.
I can't wait to see this. So, how do we see High on the Hog?
So we just delivered all the deliverables to the distributor last week, which I've been saying for a while now because I keep thinking we've delivered them, and then I find out that there's still something that we haven't done. But I have been assured that last week all the deliverables were shipped out, and so I believe they said it's going to be a few months before they get all the ducks in a row, so to speak. But it should be out.
They want it out in the fall.
They want it out in the fall, and we're just gonna. We don't know yet what the distribution platforms or strategy is going to be, but we're definitely looking forward to it. And believe me, when this movie is available and when it is nearing distribution release, it'll be promoted like a motherfucker from all of us. And, you know, if you see me at conventions, you'll be able to get copies from us at conventions and stuff. But it should be available VOD and hopefully physical media elsewhere as well.
Fantastic. So this is a good segue here because Ellie Church appeared in High on the Hog and in this next feature we're going to discuss.
Hi, Ellie.
Hey, Ellie.
Hey, Ellie.
I would say Ellie, and that's another interesting thing. Ellie goes way back, too, because of the convention circuit and how we all kind of know each other for a long time, back when she was a Tromette. Mm-hmm. And it's just funny it's nice to see all of these good people working together on these projects. So
I do not agree.
Nobody covers 1986 like us. Channel 13. Yeah.
Jamie, I'm Tina. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for tuning in.
So what's on the tube?
Skeletons in the closet.
What's that?
Hi, Widow. Every episode she goes down there and they watch horror movies with us. It's my favorite show.
Disgusting. And this is something your parents let you watch?
Every Friday night.
Earlier this evening, a patient escaped and stabbed a nurse to death in the facility's parking lot before fleeing into nearby woods.
Ooh, what's this now? Steve at the video store said this was pretty good.
I can't believe your parents let you watch this. Do you even understand what's going on?
It's a horror movie. I hope.
It's good to know you're watching the same movie I am.
If you were paying attention, you would understand what's happening.
What is happening?
In which movie?
In any of it. Wow. No, that's actually kind of scary.
He is a white male in his early 30s and is extremely dangerous.
We'll be okay, right? I thought you liked scary stuff.
This movie is gonna be f***ed up. Stay tuned.
I'm totally gonna watch that.
Me too. Psych.
this is a throwback to the 80s horror anthology. And just tell me all about this. This movie was a lot of fun, and again, way different than the first two we talked about.
You're actually the first person, Freddie, who has watched the movie and is talking to us about it now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we just started sending out the screener links to press last week, so you are the first person that we're being interviewed by who's actually seen the movie and is talking to us about it.
I'm flattered.
Did you like it?
I did. I liked it a lot. Yeah, I'm a huge. Well, I'm sure Tony knows this about me. I'm a big fan of horror shorts and anthology films in particular, and I thought this was great. I love your wraparound that you did with the widow and her mostly skeletonized murdered husband watching films. I just thought that was a great setup, a great throwback to the horror hosts of the 80s. The presentation of everything through the old CRT TV in that 80s living room, you nailed that with the babysitter and the little girl. I really liked it a lot.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Skeletons in the Closet is a really interesting story as a whole. Like the project as a whole is a really cool concept.
You want me to start from the beginning?
I mean, you could quickly go through it, yeah.
All right, so this is what happened. Here's the inception of the movie. In 2012, when I was vacationing in LA, I hit up some local Chicago horror directors, not really at random. I did some research, and I contacted 3 others, and Tony was one of them. And I said, hey, I'm interested in putting an anthology movie together. Are you guys interested? So when I was out in LA, and I think this was in March 2012, Tony was the first one that came back to me. He said, "Fuck yeah, I'm interested. Let's talk." And then I think, 2 months later in May, you were already shooting.
Yep. Which I did the Grandma O'Malley's Pantry segment of Chop Shop, which is the movie that they're watching on the show Skeletons in the Closet, in the movie Skeletons in the Closet.
I love it's an anthology film within an anthology film.
Yes. Yep, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, very meta.
I think you guys are the first ones to do that.
Cool. Well, we're hoping that people see this and really enjoy it, I mean, and it's told different from any other anthology film, where you go in and out of the movies and back into each movie and stuff, instead of it being, one, like A to B, so to speak. So we had this movie, Chop Shop, and we ultimately decided that it wasn't going to work with the 4 different short films. And so Ben and I kind of took our 2 shorts and we're like, what are we going to do with them? And they kind of sat on the back burner for a few years while we were working on World of Death. And then we started working on The Rake. And then we were working on High on the Hog. And so it's like it really took a back seat to these other projects. And so then in 2016, we had tossed around, between 2015 and 2016, we tossed around a couple ideas of how to finalize it. Do we want to just take Ben's short film, which is called The Dismantler, and my short film, Grandma O'Malley's Pantry, and just release them on a DVD and sell them at conventions? Or do we want to do something, or do we want to release them each as separate short films? And ultimately, we had a couple different ideas of how we could create wraparound content to tie these movies together and create a new feature. And it's like after coming up with 2 or 3 different concepts, nobody really pushed the button and said, all right, let's go. Let's start doing this and actually move into production, let alone write a script or anything. And I had this concept for Skeletons in the Closet in my head since college of this, Elvira-like hostess, but also this crypt keeper-like host. And the dynamic is that he is her husband who she's murdered, and she keeps his body in the basement, kind of like Norman Bates with his mother. And every episode, she comes home from work, dresses, gets undressed from her work outfit, puts on something sexy, grabs the VHS tapes that she rented from the video store and goes down to the basement and watches movies with her dead husband. And they comment on the films, but then they also have back and forth banter. And of course, it's very Alan Peg Bundy because she murdered him, so he's not exactly happy with her. Which I think is a pretty funny metaphor for a lot of marriages overall. So it's a lot of fun, and it's cool how it worked out and how coincidental the movies within Skeletons in a Closet make sense. Like you've got the short film Meisner, directed by Rian Owen, that is kind of like the intermission piece.
Hi, Rian.
Hey, fucking Ben. That's like the intermission piece to Chop Shop, where you've got these 2 bookends of Grandma O'Malley's Pantry that's 20 minutes long and The Dismantler that's 20 minutes long, and you break them up with this wraparound content of our first-person perspective of somebody in purgatory, and then you have this little segment in the middle of this woman tied to a chair in a serial killer's basement, so to speak. And like the fact that it's a movie about a woman who kills her husband, and then in Skeletons in the Closet, the widow killed her husband, so they can actually comment on that similarity. I thought, and there's more similarities, in Grandma O'Malley's Pantry, there's the dead Grandpa O'Malley, and then you've got Charlie, the widow's dead husband. So it's just funny that all of these things coincidentally happen to play well off of one another, and it's just amazing that through 6 years, we shot content to make an 80-minute feature, and it's so cohesive despite the fact that there was all that time between everything.
And I don't think people are going to pick up on that. I mean, the connections between our 2 movies, which is why we had to keep them together. I mean, our movies are basically inseparable. But I think the nice thing about Skeletons is I think that it is going to require maybe more than one viewing to figure out all the connective tissue, because there is a lot of connective tissue. But there's so much
and I noticed
on.
that you use the widow to kind of help the audience along a little bit with that, which is good. I do agree. I think I when I finished it, I was like, maybe I want to go back and kind of see what little bits you guys laid in there to foreshadow what happens later in the film.
Hell no, I changed the password on you, Freddie. You can't watch it again. You gotta buy it.
That's all right. I'll buy
it. You sweetheart, you. Supporting independent art. I love you, buddy.
Absolutely. And so if our listeners here, you said, what's this release? You said everything is in the works, right? For this to be, you have a date?
Yes,
okay,
we do.
good.
And let's make sure, I do want to talk about Ellie for a minute, because Ellie Church is fucking phenomenal. I absolutely loved working with her, both on High on the Hog and Skeletons in the Closet. So I'd love to talk about her for a minute here in a second. But we basically, so we're being distributed by Cow Lamp Films, which is out of Chicago. They're out of LA too, but
hence
they're a
Cow
division.
Lamp.
Yeah, hence Cow Lamp. So they're a division of Questar Entertainment, which is a big distributor of home video entertainment ever since the late 70s. And so we're pretty excited to work with them. We have the world premiere on September 7th at the Davis Theater in Chicago. So if you are local, I highly recommend attending. It's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. The cast and everybody are going to be there. Ellie's going to be there. It's going to be a really good time. It's going to be an 80s costume party too. So hopefully people will come dressed to the nines, 80s style. Dressed to the 89, maybe is how I should put it. And then it's being released through transactional VOD, like mid-September. So it'll be available to purchase on VOD, and then it'll be distributed via physical media, DVD and Blu-ray, as well as SVOD, so subscription video on demand, as well as ad video on demand, to October 15th, Tuesday, October 15th. It's also going to be it's making its festival premiere at Nightmares Film Festival in Columbus, Ohio.
Hi, Jason.
Hey, Jason and Chris. It's going to be premiering there Thursday opening night, which is October 18th. It plays with Maniac, the 4K restoration of Maniac, with director Bill Lustig in attendance. So that's going to be pretty cool.
Hi, Bill, who I've never met.
Hey, Joseph Zito. Oh, wait, you're dead. Rest in peace, Joseph Zito. So we're excited. It's going to be available everywhere. You can go to scotchworthy.com and you can pre-order the Blu-ray. You can buy a shirt. You can pre-order the vinyl of the soundtrack, which we're really excited to be releasing. It's a very 80s synth-heavy soundtrack with some really cool tunes in it.
Yeah, I love the what Skeletons reminded me of was the series Monsters. Did you watch that as kids?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's just in the way the POV shots from the perspective of the TV and the little girl in the foreground or babysitter in the background. You guys, you got it. You nailed it. It's so good.
Well, Skeletons in the Closet is a perspective television series. The whole point to the feature is to try and sell this as a TV show. So, we're just hoping that somebody checks it out and says, this has really great potential. Right now there is so much, not only 80s content, but primarily the horror episodic setup is just going crazy right now. It's being utilized left and right through every avenue. Netflix, Shudder, everybody's doing this now, and so Skeletons in the Closet, I think, would be a really great addition to that genre. And I really hope that somebody is interested enough in picking it up and getting a season produced, because I think that it would be very popular. If people just give this movie a chance, which I don't know how anybody who's a fan of horror movies doesn't take one look at the awesome poster that Ryan Glosmeyer, hi Ryan.
Hi Ryan.
There you go.
Nailed it.
That he created. I don't know how anybody's going to take one look at that poster, and if you're a horror fan, and not say, I want to see that movie.
It is a great poster.
And the trailer's really great. Ben did a good job of editing the trailer together to be really fun, and so I hope that people take the time to find this movie and check it out, because I think it's going to be a really, really fun movie experience for anybody who decides to sit and watch it.
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much to Ben Lewandowski and Tony Wash of Scotchworthy. Go to scotchworthy.com. See more about these gentlemen and all of their wonderful products and films and shorts and knitting. Oh, sorry.
And knitting!
You have something to add, Amazing Larry? I don't know where that came from. It's late.
You sounded like Pee-wee. That was impressive.
Oh, thank you. I've been impressed
That movie
with
really
Pee-wee.
is pretty... That movie's genius.
It's
It
the
really
best.
is.
It's the best. But thank you guys. This was fun. I loved catching up with you. And I can't wait to see what you do next.
Well, thanks for taking the time to have us both on the show and help us promote these movies. We're really excited about everything that's coming out, and I just appreciate you, checking them out, and I'm glad that you enjoyed them, And if you're lying and you didn't really enjoy them, you should have been more honest, because goddamn it, I prefer honesty. So
cross my heart and hope to die, Tony.
Oh, Freddie,
it's good stuff.
Sweetheart, you.
You haven't let me down yet, brother.
Well, I hope to continue being able to do this. I'm not getting any younger, so if I don't find a sugar mama or sugar daddy at some point in the near future,
sugar mama daddy,
or a sugar mommy daddy, or a sugar, I don't know. I don't need to go there.
I was telling Amy before we recorded, I was like, we're all aging together, all of our horror hound people.
Right?
We're just
Isn't it weird?
watching each other get old, doing our thing.
What you guys will be seeing me more often now that all these films are going to be available on physical media. I will be traveling to more conventions to sell them. It's just been tough to justify spending all the money to go to a convention when all I had was It's My Party and A Chance in Hell on DVD.
Right? Yeah, I understand that.
So
well, hopefully I'll see you both soon. And Ben, it's wonderful to meet you, sir.
Yeah, you too. Absolutely.
And do you guys have anything you'd like to say before we say good night?
Check out our movies. Go to scotchworthy.com, and it's like a bottle of scotch and worthy, like we are not worthy, but all one word, scotchworthy.com. Check out our movies, because we're horror fans making movies for horror fans. We're not a bunch of douchebags who want to make horror movies because they're easy to make at the independent level. Whoever said that's a fucking idiot, because they're not easy to make. They're not easy at all.
If you're in the Chicagoland area, go see Skeletons in the Closet September 7th, and then it's theatrical release at the Davis the 10th through the 17th.
I think it starts playing that Saturday, the 8th. So it runs at the Davis Theater in Chicago that week. I think that's Lincoln Square neighborhood. It's the north side. It's close to Wrigley Field, and it's going to be playing at the Davis Theater for the entire week after September 7th. So if you want to check it out, highly recommend you get over there and get a viewing of it in the theater for the full experience.
Sounds great. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Frankenstein was wondering if he